All right, well, paint me a picture in terms of what's going on at this thing. Teams are meeting with players, much like the NFL Draft Combine. I'm sure we have a lot of listeners who haven't paid attention to the NBA's Draft Combine.
Yeah, certainly. So basically every team has a hotel room, hotel suite, and prospects cycle in and out. These meetings aren't very long. My understanding is they're usually around 20 minutes or so, and that's for pretty much every team in the NBA casting a wide net of prospects. Obviously, the Bulls will be a little bit more focused on the top, but they also have the 15th pick. So you won't see the number one pick always going to visit with the team that holds the 27 pick, but they're very preliminary discussions in that sense. Over the next 6 weeks before the NBA draft happens, obviously, it gets more serious with in-person workouts and visits in team towns and facilities. So this is really just stage one of everything, but the part from the media perspective, obviously, is that all these players are required to talk to the media. And you said set it up, and it was very interesting because they literally set up kind of a stage for AJ Debansa and Darryn Peterson with NBA signage between them, and they talked at the same time. And if you stood in a spot, you could look at Peterson on your left, Debansa on your right, everyone around them. Then they cycle them out. Next thing you know, Caleb Wilson and Cam Boozer are kind of doing the same thing. So those are the four guys taking center stage here as they met with the media and as everyone wonders where they go on June 23rd in the NBA draft.
You bet. And the Bulls could end up with any one of those four, frankly. Maybe even a trade up for AJ Debansa. It's worth considering as he's likely to go one, but we'll see. We have an opportunity to hear from all of them. We're going to play the cuts and want you to react to it, Cody, and let us know what you think and what you thought as you heard these guys. Caleb Wilson from North Carolina, a big, tall drink of water. This is Caleb talking about The Last Dance, the Bulls documentary, and meeting Patrick Williams and knowing and perhaps even embodying the acronym of Bryson Graham.
I know a lot about Chicago. I know Mike went here from North Carolina, and, I watched The Last Dance, so, I got a little bit of history on Chicago, and I think it's a great place for sure.
All right, what players do you know?
I know Rob, I know Patrick Williams. I met Patrick last night, and I met Leonard Taylor last night, too.
Have you talked to the representatives there for us? What do you learn about their new direction? Obviously, you just hired Bryson Graham.
I feel like they're in a great direction. I know about the slap, size, length, athleticism, physicality. So, I think it would be a great spot, honestly. But, I'm just blessed to be in this opportunity. I'll be a great player for whoever drafts me.
Are you a slap guy?
For sure. Yeah, whatever my team needs me to be, I win, and that's just what I'm going to do.
Caleb Wilson's a guy to keep your eyes on, guys. He is, as you talk to people here at the NBA Combine, viewed as the most likely guy right now to be available at number 4 for the Bulls among those top 4. And like you said, that goes two ways, guys, because Caleb Wilson has Chicago in mind. When he says some of those things, you're thinking he understands there's a really good chance Chicago is where he goes among the top 4. So he's a guy, I think, measured at 6'9" without shoes, listed at 6'10", 211 pounds. His goal is to put on more weight. His goal is to shoot three-pointers better. Only shot 27 of them in 24 games at North Carolina last year. But, guys, this guy's a physical freak. He can get up and down the court. He led college basketball in dunks in early February when he suffered a hand and thumb injury that sidelined him for the rest of the season. But a really interesting prospect, I think, over the next 6 weeks. If you're going to get to know one of them, that would be the one probably most worth your time to get to know, because it feels like there's a really good chance he could end up here with the Bulls eventually, guys.
Now, Cody, you've watched these draft workouts and combine before. You've seen the measurables, and everybody's wowed by size and skill. Over the years when you've done this, when you talk to people around the NBA, what are the things that stand out when it comes to these guys that are usually at the top of the draft?
Well, I think one of the things that's interesting is the wingspan and the measurements, right? The height and then the wingspan. So, an interesting note is that Caleb Wilson's essentially an inch taller than Cam Boozer, but Cam Boozer's wingspan's an inch longer, right? So if you look at it through that prism, Caleb Wilson his measurements didn't wow you beyond what we'd kind of already seen on the court. So that's not a big concern or anything like that. But for someone like Boozer, that matters because it mitigates maybe something that was a little bit of a worry for some. Obviously worried about his athleticism at the NBA level, stuff like that. So you compare and contrast prospects in that way. So there's nothing huge usually with the top prospects because they've proved so much on the court in college basketball that can change anything. But especially for some of these guys in the mid-first round, late first round, an impressive showing if they choose to play in the scrimmage can be a really big deal. Measurements that come in a little bit taller, a little bit longer than anticipated, vertical jumps that are 3 inches taller than you'd expect, stuff like that. Can help them shoot up the draft boards of teams.
I know that many of you Bulls fans are going to be hearing these guys' voices for perhaps the first time, and all 4 of these guys potentially the next linchpin of the Bulls team for several years to come. Here's Cam Boozer, one of the twins, son of Carlos, asked about the disrespect for him that is out there and also his meeting with the Chicago Bulls.
Cam, you were the most successful high school player in recent history, the college player of the year, and a lot of people don't have you in the discussion for the number 1 pick. What is your message given that disconnect?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, when you value certain things, those type of people are going to be the people who see my value and my worth. So I'm not really worried about what people talk about in terms of who the number 1 pick is or who it's supposed to be, especially because most people are social media people and those opinions don't really matter. But like I said before, whether I go 1 or 2, 3, 4, or whatever it might be, it's more about the fit and situation for me.
You had a quote yesterday about if they want to hang a banner or something like that, they would go with you. Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like at the end of the day, the team's goal is to win a championship. I mean, I feel like I'm the guy. I think my resume speaks for itself. What I do, what I bring to the team every day, my leadership. I just feel like that's how it is.
You talked to the Bulls. What were those discussions like?
Yeah, we talked. I mean, it was a good conversation. So we talked.
What has your dad said about playing in Chicago?
He loved playing here. It's a great city. They have a great fan base. His teams here were decently competitive, pretty competitive. So, he definitely enjoyed his time in Chicago.
So interesting. Cody, your thoughts?
Yeah, it was pretty striking to sit in with Caleb Williams' interview or Caleb Wilson's interview and then go over to Cam Boozer because Wilson was so happy-go-lucky almost, and that might be a bit of a stretch, but very laid back, talk about how he wants to have fun on the court. And then Cam Boozer, he's really a guy that, gets down to business there when he's talking about stuff. A couple reporters in different ways asked him about weaknesses or misconceptions about his game, and he said, people have said those things to me, and then they followed up by saying, what are those weaknesses, misconceptions? And he said, I'm keeping that to myself. So he was very much straight and to the point and everything there. But another guy, if he falls to 4, Bulls fans shouldn't complain. They should be happy whoever they get there because, look, you're talking about a guy who averaged 22 points, 10, 11 rebounds at Duke, and his passing touch is really, really good for a big man. So he could be the fulcrum, the linchpin of an offense in a way that someone like Caleb Wilson isn't going to be able to be early in his NBA career. So some of that's the star potential ceiling versus floor, but you're looking at a guy who's going to be an immediate impact player, I think, when it comes to certainly counting stats and production in the NBA.
What I heard listening to Cam Boozer there, guys, I hear a guy that grew up in locker rooms, right? I heard a guy that, and Cody used the word professional. You hear that. He has been in the spotlight since he was a child, probably walking around behind his dad here in Chicago and in other stops. And it feels like amongst the top 4, he's the guy that it's almost boring for some fans if you draft him because he's not the splashy player like the other guys are, but the talent's there. Without
a doubt, and that is kind of a knee-jerk negativity that we'll have a chance to work through between now and the draft. It's Spiegs and Russ Dorsey here on the Spiegel and Holmes Show. Our guy Cody Westerlund is out at the NBA Draft Combine at Wintrust Arena. Here's A.J. Debansa, the freshman from BYU, the likely number 1 pick, comparing his skill set to NBA players and talks about his underrated skill as well.
Yeah, it depends. I think I showcase I can be on ball as like a lead guard, so I think I can play that Cade Cunningham type of role where I'm a lead guard and I can get others better, but also scoring. But I also think I can be a Anthony Edwards type of guy, be on ball as a scorer or off ball as a scorer. But I think I could be like a versatile guy that could be placed in the middle of multiple other guys that can also score and just be like a good option to just score in the half court.
AJ, what's an underrated or overlooked skill of yours, or even a trait that you think people should take notice?
Probably my playmaking ability. Just getting 2 feet in the paint, making the right read. I think it's very underrated.
Yeah, Debansa is really interesting, guys, because like you said, underrated skill of him trying to say that he wants to be more of a playmaker, and that's just him noting how great, I think in another way of how great of a scorer he was at BYU, that he can do more, and he was certainly asked to do a lot at BYU, averaging 25.5 points per game. It's a guy that gets to the lane, to the rim, to the free throw line at a super, super high rate, and that's extremely important in NBA, we know. So it's fascinating how some of these guys stack up. We'll get to Darryn Peterson here in a second, more the shooter, obviously. And we talked about Cam Boozer does it in different ways. Well, A.J. Debansa puts a ton of pressure on the rim, can finish with both hands. So I expect him to probably go number 1 or 2, so I don't think he's going to be on the Bulls' radar unless they paid a hefty price to trade up. But you never know what the Bulls are thinking. You never know how the top few slots shake out either.
Darryn Peterson was expected to be the number 1 pick in this very deep draft before the college basketball season began, but things were bumpy at Kansas. There was a lot of cramping issues that kept him out of games, and there was questions about his want to in relate to that. He addresses that here and points the finger at creatine. He was also asked, was Darryn Peterson, about the Bulls interview and what they asked him.
I think most of the interviews right now, they're just asking me like about my upbringing and what I think I can bring to the team, and just kind of telling my story.
How much are they asking you about your medical stuff? I know that was a big question coming into all this.
Actually, surprisingly, not a lot. I think what I did with ESPN kind of gave people some answers, but I haven't got a lot of questions about it at all.
Are there any concerns that you have moving forward after learning about the creatine stuff?
Nah.
Darryn, how did you come to view that creatine could help, and when did you realize it wasn't doing what you had hoped it would do for you?
Coming in, it was something that was just provided for us, and like smoothies before and after weights. So like I didn't think they would give me anything that wouldn't be beneficial. Obviously, they didn't know what I had going on, so they gave them to everybody on the team. And I figured it out after the season, just getting a baseline on myself, taking more tests, and figured it out.
How surprised were you when they said this is what's causing the cramping? What's been causing?
Super surprised because during the year I was doing everything I could to figure out what it was. So yeah, I was super surprised and happy.
So, Cody, for anybody who missed it, Darryn Peterson told ESPN on Friday that he'd never taken creatine before college. After the year, as he mentioned there, they did tests that showed his baseline level was already high. So the cramping was because of the levels of creatine. Are people buying that?
I mean, Spigs, who among us hasn't put too much creatine in a smoothie, right? Like, so we were going there. But I actually think teams are buying that probably because I've done a lot of reading, obviously, in the past few weeks and months, too, and there kind of seems to be a belief in the NBA. The creatine thing was a big storyline in the media that isn't as big of a deal to NBA teams, in part because they trust their medical staff so much, in part because they're more sophisticated. They can run testing, diagnostics on all these players and everything. So I think their concern with Peterson, I think, would be that he hasn't been a playmaker for others in college. He shot about 10 field goal attempts per game per assist that he had, which was a really, really high rate. So, like, if he comes in, he's coming in to be a scorer. Does that fit your team? How much can he play make for others? It's not so much, I don't think, the cramping issues that have them concerned at this point. And at that point, you get into, like, the debates that are really hard to pinpoint, like, for love of the game, who has more love of the game. But, like, it doesn't seem like teams are too worried about that at this point. I think the discussion is for teams, does he have a higher ceiling than Debansa? And when we say teams, the Wizards at the 1 spot and whoever might be considering trading up to that spot as well, is the discussion that most teams are having at this point. But, look, they all came off very well. I think they're a little bit different personalities in that sense, but there shouldn't be too many roadblocks and question marks with these guys by the time the draft process gets here or the NBA draft gets here.
So you think it's unlikely that teams are scared of Peterson and he falls down to 4?
I think that's unlikely, yes. If you're asking me who has a better chance to fall to 4, Peterson or Debansa, I would certainly say Peterson. No doubt about that. Like, if you're power ranking who's going to go to the Bulls right now, I'd say Caleb Wilson 1, Cam Boozer 2, Darryn Peterson 3, because there could be a world like Carlos Boozer works in the Jazz front office right now, right? Like there could be a world where that helps influence the Jazz to draft his son. So now all of a sudden Peterson isn't going to. Maybe that causes Memphis to instead take Caleb Wilson or something. These just different permutations of how the top 4 could go, right? So I think it's worth talking about all of them. But if you're asking what's most likely at this point, I'd still say for the Bulls, Caleb Wilson, Cam Boozer, then Darryn Peterson.
Thank you so much. Great job, Cody Westerlund. We'll talk to you.
Yep. Take care, guys.